Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and a warm welcome to this special edition of the Talking Tales. And today in our studio we have invited Anurag Behar. Some of you may be familiar with his name, people who are especially into two things, books and education. Anurag Behar is the CEO, he's the Chief Executive Officer of one of the world's largest philanthropic institutions. He's also a writer and a prolific traveler. The attempt in today's episode is to know more about his book, A Matter of the Heart, Education in India, plus of course, know him more as a person holistically. Of course, through this book and even other writings as well. Anurag, it's a privilege and a pleasure welcoming you to the studios.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine, actually.
So the first intriguing question that comes to mind, Anurag, is, was there a personal trigger for this title?
Yes, there's a personal trigger to that title.
What?
And it's a long story.
Yeah.
Shall we begin with that?
Sure.
Okay. So, the book is essentially a collection of what I have written over the past 12, 13 years as I traveled through the country. And I saw what I saw on the ground, mostly about school education, a little bit about here and there, right? My father has spent his almost his entire life dedicated to improving school education in the country. And I remember there was a meeting, and it's a little bit of a strange thing, right? I mean, he works in education, I work in education. It's a little bit like those, like Tendulkar's son being in the same room. So I was in this room, and I'm talking about like 14, 15 years ago. I was in this room, and it's a room full of people working in education. And somebody asked something. And he said, I just don't remember the context, but he said, education, in education, the heart of the matter is that it's a matter of the heart. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just stuck with me. And it's stuck with me because I understand where he comes. I mean, he's not some loosey-goosey, person. He's been an administrator. He's run large state education systems. And so he's a very deep understanding, both theoretical and experiential, of education. But if his life's experience says that the heart of the matter is that it's a matter of the heart, it just stayed with me for the past 15, 17 years, right?
Yeah.
And then every day that I have worked, every day I've been on the ground, everything that I have seen, that just brings it to life. That, it is so difficult, it is so hard, teachers don't have resources, students find it difficult to come to school, parents find it difficult to send their children to school. But miracles happen all the time, every day, everywhere, right? And why? Because it's a matter of the heart.
Tell me, did your father actually inspire you to, enter the field of education? Albeit taking a different route, but...
Very interestingly, not so. I don't think so. Or perhaps I should say it like this, that not consciously so at all. So, I was a black sheep of the family. And, like many black sheeps of my kind, I went to do engineering, did an MBA, and I was perhaps the first person from my family to join a private sector for-profit organization. That's why I called myself black sheep, because my entire family is in public service in one way or the other, right? So it's like horror of horrors. How's this person, the eldest son of this generation, he is leaving public service and joining, for-profit businesses. So that's what happened. And, I worked in business for many years. I worked in business for, I think, nearly 17, 18 years, 20 years maybe. It's just my good fortune that I was working in an organization where my boss happened to be Mr. Premji. And, as I think most of the country knows, he's perhaps one of the most generous philanthropists in the world.
Of course.
And so he set up this foundation, the Azim Premji Foundation. And it just so happened that, through a series of coincidences, accidents, he asked me whether I would move to the foundation. Because I guess he had realized I had no interest in business, even before I had realized. Okay. So...
what with your expertise in precision engineering and management?
Correct. So anyhow, so I moved. So it is not because of my father that I moved at all. I mean, it is just that, those sort of opportunities sort of opened up. But, at a deeper level, I think it's true. I mean, like you say that I was using that cricket example, or you use the example of how, musicians, children, even if they don't become musicians, they grow up in an atmosphere where they're listening, they're just imbued with that atmosphere. So I keep joking, that when I was growing up, most kids my age, their bookshelves will be full of Enid Blyton or Rajan Iqbal. I don't know whether you know what Rajan Iqbal is, right? Rajan Iqbal and Enid Blyton. My bookshelves had that kind of stuff, but my first encounter was with Pedagogy of the Oppressed or Paul Goodman. And, so that's how I grew up. So there is no doubt in my mind that I have ended up where I have because of the household I was brought up in, because of my father. But if I had not joined the organization after my MBA, if my boss had not been what he was, even then it won't have happened. So I think these two things just came together.
The title has succeeded in trickling down. It has taken 5 minutes, but finally I've understood, and suddenly I realized, looking at it institutionally is one way. Even if I look at it personally, I'm suddenly reminded of a very common fact that I am the father of a school student and the husband of a teacher. My wife teaches.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
So suddenly now, something else has lit up, so to say. And I'm also an animal lover.
Okay.
Because on many pages I've realized, besides human beings, you've also been kind to animals, and animals have been kind to you during your journeys. So, let me now come to the first part of what strikes the eye, and that is the cover design illustration of the book. Tell us more about the entire philosophy, the entire thought behind it. One can clearly see a girl with hope in her eyes enjoying a swing on tree branches with a couple of children playing around. Is it signifying something? Or is it meant to signify something?
It is. It's both signifying something, let's say, metaphorically, symbolically, but then it's also painting a very real picture of something that's there inside the book. So let me tell you about that first. And this is an afternoon somewhere, and I won't name the place. Afternoon somewhere.
But why wouldn't you name the place? I mean,
I eventually formed a habit of not naming places and people. Initially, I used to do it because what I realized is that my naming people and places, it often gives them the kind of spotlight locally which they don't want. Right? So I'm just protecting their identities. That's the reason I don't name the places.
Is it also to avoid stereotypes in the minds of...
Not really. Okay. No, I mean, I made the mistake of, I thought, to give you a couple of instances, I thought, this teacher is doing something wonderful. She's battling such tough circumstances, and I named her and I named the school. And I went back to her a year later. She said, you did such a wonderful thing by acknowledging me. But, after you have written, this officer has been saying this to me and saying that to me, etc. So I said, let me avoid all this, right? So that's how I started protecting the identities. So one afternoon somewhere, I enter a school and there's this beautiful chabutra. And on that beautiful chabutra, you have absolutely the unmissable emblem, the symbol of India, which is the great banyan tree, right? You have that there. And you have two small little girls, right? And I go there and the small little girls, they say, come up. You can't go into the school without paying respects to the Baba. So I said, what are you saying? The little girls, they're hanging like what you see there, and they're hanging. What is this? So you come up here. So I said, okay, I'll go up. So you take off your shoes. So I took off my shoes. I went up. So there's a qabr, small shrine there, right? So it's some local Baba. So I'm supposed to, because these two girls are saying, you have to pay respects, only then you can go in. So I go in, I pay respects, and I come down, and they're still playing, and they said, okay, now you can go. So I said, what's your name? One girl says Lakshmi, the other says Mary, right? And this is the banyan tree. I mean, can you believe? I mean, can you think can you think of an India more coming together in front of that qabr, right? It was just extraordinary. It just stayed with me, right? So, so that's really, and I wrote about this. After I wrote about this, many people wrote back to me, at least 6-8 people wrote back to me saying, oh, you made it up. It is not possible. How is it possible that everything comes together like this in one place? I said, well, that's India, right? That's India for you. So that's really what happened, right? I mean, that's where I drew the imagery from. But without doubt, it's symbolic, it's metaphorical of the India that I'm talking about. It's symbolic, metaphorical of education, right? And symbolic, metaphorical of education as to how it grows and how children must grow with it or in it with fun, which is what the lovely cover. And I'm so grateful to the illustrator for the cover. So it is that. I'm myself loving it, actually.
You described it so well, Anurag. Coming to the style and content, one can't help but observe the fact that most of it is in first person, and of course one can understand these are personal accounts actually, and it is also a kind of a travelogue, is it? If you look at it in its entirety.
It is, it's a, I don't know whether to call it travelogue, when you say travelogue, it sort of suddenly elevates
travelogue at a higher level.
No, I'm saying it elevates it. I get reminded of Rahul Sankratine. So it's not a travel. I'm just, like I say in my opening thing, I'm a manager, I'm just an incidental writer. So, but you're right, this is, somebody like me, right? I live in Bangalore. I am responsible for this large foundation. I'm really cut off from the reality of this country. So if I choose to stay in Bangalore or in Delhi, right, in my car and of my office to my home, to my, these wonderful conferences in these beautiful places, you're cut off from reality. That's not India. Right? India is not there. India is out there. And out there doesn't necessarily mean rural areas. Out there might well be in Delhi, just across the street somewhere. But do we take the trouble of going across that street? That's the question, right? So, I sort of seem to be going back to my father and my boss again, but I must go back to my father and my boss. I learned this from both of them. I learned from my father, and I learned this from my father when I was a kid. He was an IS officer. So I learned this from my father, and he used to say it in Hindi. Mauke pe jana padta hai. Which means you do not understand unless you go to the spot, right? So I'm talking about this when I was maybe 6, 8, 7, and we will see this, something will happen. He was collector somewhere or he was commissioner somewhere, and there'll be trouble or some, I'm talking about 40 years ago. And he would leave everything, take the car and go himself. And we'd be wondering, he's the commissioner, why is he going there, right? He's got all kind. His point, no, mauke pe jana padta hai. Unless I go there and see it myself immerse myself there, I don't understand. Same thing with my boss. I learned it from him maybe 25 years ago. That, he's such a famous person, and he was that even then. But even after all his success, he would himself always go to the customer, go to the factory, spend time with the cashier of the customer. And the customer's owner, the CEO, won't believe it that Mr. Premji is coming here to talk to. Why is he doing this? Right? But the point is, unless you go there, you don't understand. So anyhow, I said, I think I learned all this. So when I started working when I started working in business, I just adopted the same tactics, the same approach. People can keep saying whatever they want, but I will just go. And then I rose up through the ranks, and then I became CEO of a business and subsequently CEO of the foundation. And as a CEO, you're likely to get cut off very quickly. So I
gets lonely at the top.
Well, lonely at the top, that's a different subject. We can talk about it later. It's more that one gets cut off from reality. Right? One gets cut off from reality. So I made up my mind that whatever happens, 100 days a year, I will spend in the field. And when I say field, what I mean, I don't mean that from Delhi I will go to Meerut or to Agra or to some place, right? I'll go to Badmer. From Badmer, I'll go to Chauthan. Chauthan, Dhuri Manna. I'm just giving some names. And if you go to Uttarkashi, go to Purola, go to, Lohardaga, So go and spend 120 days in these places, which is where the real India is, right? So I spent all this time, and now 13, 14 years I've been doing this consistently. And therefore, you're right in a way that, it's a travelogue.
What was there beyond the standard script?
I don't know really, perhaps part of the standard script. Well, I think one is that, in a sense, my convictions have only grown stronger. Right? Two, that if I look back, maybe all those many years ago, I was operating on faith. Faith meaning, well, I have heard that good things can happen. Well, I have heard that there are good people out there. Well, I have heard that despite all constraints, you can overcome, right? But now after these years, and now having seen those people, now having experienced it almost every day, I am convinced it can happen. It happens. There are people there. So I think that conviction has grown just enormously. I'm completely convinced that this country, these people are people. We are good. We can be good. We will overcome. It's difficult, but that's the way life is.
Anurag, part of the journey must also have been that journey that took place for the purpose of getting this book published. We are curious to know how that journey was. From concept to the reading table. How long was that process? And
this was, I wouldn't have done it at all, but for the help of many of my friends and colleagues. I've been writing this stuff now for 13 years. And people have been telling me, get it collected, do something about it, publish it into a book, and I've just not paid attention. Just not paid attention at all to it. And, particularly my colleague and friend Giri, who really played a central role in getting this done. And Mala, whom I was fortunate enough to find. So basically the two of them sort of put it together, really. And it was so I've written a fair bit. They had to sort of look at it and cut it down. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough to know Kartika, and we just got talking and at Westland. And then she wanted to publish it. It was just wonderful. Then, of course, Westland went through its own transition, right? So, I mean, to be truthful to you, I have not had to sweat at all on this, but because my friends have done all the work.
So my question is, when a book gets published and then the final copy comes to the actual writer's table, hands. I mean, does he or she find a lot of sub-editing that has taken place, or did they try to keep it as pure as possible?
This is as pure as possible.
Purely a technical question.
Yeah, this is as pure as possible. I mean, in my writing, I must have made a few mistakes or many mistakes here and there. That's been sort of changed, but it's as true to what I have written. So it's a completely true representation of what I wrote in its entirety. Yeah.
Moving slightly away from books, of course not totally, because your book is about education. We have come to know that you've been part of the committee that was responsible for framing the new education policy. You've been part of that. So tell us something more about the association with them that you had. What areas were...
Sure. So, just for a short introduction, the National Education Policy 2020, which was notified by the Government of India in July 2020, it's the first comprehensive national education policy since 1986. And that national education policy is a 66-page document. It is essentially based on the 484-page Dr. Kasturirangan Committee report, which we submitted to the Government of India in May of 2019. And then the Government of India considered our report, and on that basis formulated the National Education Policy. So I was a member of the drafting committee. So a drafting committee of the National Education Policy. There were 4 of us who essentially drafted the National Education Policy. And I was a member of the 4-member drafting committee of the National Education Policy. I must mention very clearly that by being a member of the drafting committee, it doesn't mean that this wonderful transformative national education policy is reflective of some grand wisdom I have. It's not that. I mean, it was a hugely consultative process. It was ensured that the very best experts in every area and every field contributed. Of course, we brought it together, and Dr. Kasturirangan chaired the committee marvelously, absolutely, right? So it was a wonderful thing for me. It was a great learning experience, and it is, of course, one of the points of satisfaction of the past few years that I have. So that is my role.
Anurag, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I would want you to conclude with something. I mean, you must have had very good experiences, notable experiences that since as we have termed your entire thing a journey, let's conclude with one such either incident or observation that kind of sums it up, the entire effort of your book, the entire purpose of your book. It gets reflected in that.
So I talked about one summer afternoon where on that Chabutra I met Mary and Lakshmi. Another summer afternoon. Another, brutal summer afternoon somewhere in India. And there's a school. It's a government school. My stories are all about government schools, because government school teachers do a great job, or most government school teachers do a great job. So this blazing sun, there's this person, this young man, young because he's young, he's like 28, 29. he teaches 45 kids alone.
Uh-huh.
45 kids alone, class 1 to 5, and he teaches 3 subjects. So imagine teaching 45 kids alone, 3 subjects, right? Math, Hindi, and the equivalent of, let's say, environmental studies, right?
Great.
And he doesn't have a bike, he doesn't have anything. He cycles 9 kilometers one way every day and the other way back, right? So I went there and spent the afternoon with him, and I'm marveling, absolutely marveling at this guy. That, you know, at your age, with all this, how are you doing all this? I mean, that's my reaction to the person. And he said to me something which most of us will do well to remember in our lives. He said, "Sir, मुश्किलें गिनाने से कम नहीं हो जाती. Difficulties don't become any less by recounting them." Right? Now, that is a spirit that all of us can absorb, right? I mean, everybody has difficulty, and that my book is essentially a testament to that. That who doesn't have difficulty? You take the President of the United States of America, he or she has difficulties, right? So everybody has difficulty. The question is, what do we do with those circumstances? And that book, every story, or pretty much every story, is about a person who says, look, मुश्किल गिनाने से कम तो नहीं होती. I will do whatever I can.
Anurag, it has been a stimulating interaction on a topic that's actually a matter of the heart. Thank you very much for sparing time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.